scientific research, human beings originated in the Great Rift Valley of East Africa some 3.5 million years ago, in places like Olduvai Gorge, made famous by Louis Leakey and his noteworthy family of archaeologists. Dressed almost exactly as I am today, I was thinking about Leakey, his family, and their discoveries when my two guides and I rolled into a Hadzabe settlement early one morning last October. Much studied by anthropologists, the Hadzabe are a tribe of hunter-gatherers that live in northern Tanzania, very near the country of our two friends from Kenya. It's close to Serengeti National Park. Specifically, it is on the shores surrounding Lake Eyasi, which is a seasonal body of water. The Hadzabe are true hunter-gatherers, meaning that the 2,000 of them live in groups of 20 to 40 people, and they're on the move every 2 or 3 weeks. 12,000 years ago, at the dawn of agriculture, there were 7 million people scattered across the planet. Today, there are more than 7 billion of us, but there are only about 20 hunter-gatherer tribes left around the world. But even in this small group, the Hadzabe are special. One of the things that sets them apart is their language, and linguists tell us that they are a language isolated, which means that their way of speaking is not related to any other tongue in the world. And they are most noteworthy, if you will, for their tongue-clicking sounds, which sound suspiciously like the noises that our friend Jared so assiduously counts when he is our author. My purpose in being with the Hadzabe was to go on a hunt with some trekkers, some hunters. But before that event started, we were asked to sit around an open campfire. And there we literally chewed the fat of an antelope which had been killed the night before. And as I sat there with my two guides and listened to the conversation that ensued between the hunters, my guides, and myself, I would just marvel at the sounds and the dialogue in this ancient, archaic language. And I said to myself, there has to be a Toastmaster speech in this experience. As for the hunt, it lasted about 90 minutes, and it consisted of 3 or 4 hunters going through the underbush, shooting at small mammals and birds with their bows and arrows. Interestingly enough, the Hadzabe hunters supply about 20% of the caloric intake of any group. The women of the tribe provide the other 80%, and they go through the same underbush, but they're picking or gathering fruit and nuts and berries, roots, tubers. The Lake Eyasi area is very drought prone. It's very dry. And over the last several decades, some interloping tribes have encroached on traditional Hadzabe lands. These would be herders and farmers who plant corn. Now, when times are good, those herders and farmers, they got no problems. But when a drought arises, they would literally starve to death if it weren't for government intervention giving them foodstuffs. But the Hadzabe, no problem. They never have tough times during those conditions of drought because they're simply never going to overharvest either the animals or the wild crops that exist in any territory. And since they're always on the move, they're always going into some new place where there's food for themselves. themselves. And as I walked behind these Hadzabe hunters at a distance of about 50 kilometers, I just marveled at this thought that this ancient technique of hunting and gathering has actually sustained humanity for the bulk of our existence. When the hunt was over, we returned back to this settlement, and we were taken to a dry riverbed, and the hunters set up some targets, and they displayed their awesome prowess in archery. We thought we should leave. We were about to leave, but they said, no, come back to our camp, which we did. And there, they broke out into a joyful and spontaneous song and dance routine, which is their way of celebrating our visit to their settlement. The Hadzabe do not live in a paradise, and their life is tough, but they seem very happy. And over the last century, they have successfully warded off the efforts of well-meaning government officials and missionaries to drive them off their traditional lands and put them in permanent settlements. And as we eventually did leave, piled into our Land Rover and drove off, oddly enough, to Olduvai Gorge, just 50 kilometers away, I had a bit of an epiphany. And I thought to myself, if a time traveler were to come back to this spot in, say, 100,000 years, he would probably find the Hadzabe living much like they are today. There's something eternal about the Hadzabe lifestyle and culture. They're very tough, they're resilient, but most of all, they remind us of our ancient roots. For me, it was an incredible experience to spend some time in their world, if only for a morning. Mr. Toastmaster.